5 years. That's how long I've spent developing the visual style for this project. 5 years. And at some point, I had even illustrated that 5 pages of the graphic novel. Then I scrapped it all and started over. This is what Amsideria looks like now. And I want to show you exactly how I got here. My name is Reu A.T.T. I run Reuby Studios, and I'm making a graphic novel called Amsideria, the Flying Man. It's set in colonial era Africa in a fictional kingdom called Amsideria, and it follows a prince named Obu, who is not ready for what his people are about to need from him. This series, Pre-Flight, is a documentary of how it gets made, from the beginning to the very end. Monthly episode. If you've been here since season 0, you know this has been a long runway. Today, we finally lift off. If you're new and want the full origin story, there's a link in the description. Fair warning, it's a bit messy, but that's kind of the point. Here's the original poster for Amsideria, the Flying Man. I designed this in 2019. Before I'd even written the script. I was working solely off an idea. You can see the title reads Captain Flying Man. That was the original name. At that point, the story was going to be set against the backdrop of World War II. The prince would be fighting in Europe for the British. I wanted to highlight the role Africans played in the world wars because it's often forgotten. A lot of Africans died in both conflicts. My grandfather was a World War II veteran, although luckily he never saw active combat. He worked mostly with the British barracks. When I started doing research, I found out that the British didn't want to send Africans to fight against Europeans out of fear that the myth of European racial superiority would be shattered once Africans saw white men dying. Very limited African forces were used in World War II, even in Egypt, where the British were fighting a desperate battle against Germany. Most Africans served in East Asia against the Japanese, whom Europeans also considered a lesser people at the time. Because of that racial prejudice, I decided to depict the character the way Africans would be depicted by Western cartoonists in the era, but have him do remarkable things on the battlefield. The rugby hat would be gifted to him by a British soldier, the white cape by a medic. As a prince, he would have been probably among the most educated men in his troop. In the Amsiderian Gazette #1, The Flying Man, I write in detail about how the story evolved into what it is now, eventually set on the onset of World War I. Once the story evolved and the first draft of the script was done, the visuals had to change. The story no longer focused on racial dynamics alone or a European war. I pursued a more realistic art style first, but I found it bland. Then I began experimenting with something bolder and decided to use it on the graphic novel. I had already drawn 35 or 36 pages. Then I scrapped everything and started over. There was still a lot of self-doubt about the visual direction. The style kept changing. Some of the early designs felt too exaggerated, sometimes too cartoony. Looking back, I think my artistic voice was still developing. I needed more time to formulate a real design philosophy. That's what compelled me to get rid of those first 36 pages, and the project went into hiatus for almost 3 years. When I returned to the project in 2025, my artistic voice had drastically changed. One of the biggest influences right before I shelved it was, and I'm serious about this, a love for socks. I started drawing them instinctively, to the point where I stopped putting shoes on my character altogether. My voice was starting to take shape. That love for socks eventually led to my art style, the Akalabashi. Derived from the word calabash, it's heavily influenced by my love for socks, African culture, and animation. As I explained in the Amsiderian Gazette number 16, sock philosophy gives rise to a calabashi design. And in the Amsiderian Gazette number 23, Heaven in the Hague, I explain how a trip to the Netherlands shaped the visual language further. To be honest, going with such an expressive and experimental art style terrifies me. So why do it? The Akalabashi is a chance to break away from conventional animation styles and typical graphic novel visual. It leans into abstract and expressionist thinking, more common in fine art than in comics. And in a world drowning in AI-generated images, it seems like the logical next step. Create more expressive art, not more accurate art. The visual style is instantly recognizable. Whether you like it or not, it forces you to pause and look at the figures. That's not an accident. That's the point. This one is more personal, but I find it more engaging to draw because I'm fully expressing my thinking and everything is measured. Nothing is there because it's anatomically correct or realistic. Every line, every decision is there because I want it there. The Akalabashi is also racially ambiguous. Anyone can project themselves onto these figures, which is very fitting in a modern context where being African no longer means you're black, nor being European means you're white. And it's essential for this project specifically because I don't want to vilify an entire race for the actions of a few elites. And I like the Akalabashi because it opens up significant potential for other commercial channels for little Reuby down the line. To find out what those are, you'll have to subscribe because I'm not telling today. Now, for all the reasons I like it, here are the reasons that fuel my self-doubt more than I'm willing to admit. Because the Akalabashi is too weird, too experimental, there's a fear at the back of my mind that it might not be commercially viable. I'm hoping when the project is done, it finds a small audience, but it's very weird. I'll likely have to rework the script once I get into production, because in its current form, it doesn't fully align to this visual style, and that's something I'm dreading. Some people may find it pretentious. There's a lot of hostility towards modern art movements online. I do understand why someone would hate taping a banana on a wall and calling it art, but wouldn't it be more impressive if the banana stayed perfectly yellow 100 years from now? And then there's human psychology working against me. Because of the lack of human-like facial features, it may not connect with a human audience. Perhaps, like violinists, I'll have to make my art for cows. I highlight these fears and other developments on the project in the Amsiderian Gazette, a weekly publication where you'll find detailed explanations about the project, the Hague trip, the sock philosophy, the full Akalabashi origin. It's all in there. This week in the Amsiderian Gazette number 24, you can see the final renditions of the Akalabashi design that will define the visual direction of the project. Link in the description. Next month, I start drawing the most important character in the story. His name is Obu. He is a prince. He is the reason this book exists. And after 5 years of working on this world, I'm still not sure I fully understand it. Next month, I figure out why.